President Biden speaking before a joint session of Congress, shaking the vice president's hand there, Speaker Mike Johnson's hand as well. There was a lot at stake going into this evening. This is probably the largest, if not one of the largest audiences President Biden will have before the election come November. Came right out of the gate, looking at Republicans in that room in particular when talking about Vladimir Putin, saying we must help Ukraine, we must fund Ukraine. Putin is on the march. Talked about his predecessor in comments that the former president, Donald Trump, though didn't use his name, has said about Putin in recent days. We'll get to what Trump said about Putin in just a moment here. The president telling the American people in that chamber, the American people, that history is watching. He talked about the overturning of Roe versus Wade, what's followed, the IVF debate in this country. So you can see him begin to leave the chamber here. And he looked right at the Supreme Court justices. He spoke of their decision that said women have electoral power, and he essentially said you're about to see it come November. And on immigration, which is certainly one of the top issues, if not the top issue, as we head into November, the president again squarely looking at Republicans in that room, saying we must act on that bipartisan bill out of the Senate from both Republicans, conservative Republicans and Democrats. Senator Langford looking on. The cutaway of him from Oklahoma, Senator Langford nodding yes. President Biden arguing we could adjudicate asylum seekers in 6 months instead of 6 years with this bill, listing all the other things that come with it too, saying we can fight about the border or we can fix it. We should fix it now. Our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, Senator Bernie Sanders shaking the president's hand. We know, as I mentioned earlier, Senator Sanders, one of the many offering advice in the days leading up to this speech. I'm curious what you're hearing from your sources. Did he do what they wanted him to do?
I can tell you the White House is very happy right now. I bet there are a lot of high fives going on right now. They knew the challenges going into this. The president well aware of the criticism of his campaign, the pressure on him to perform tonight. The White House feels that he nailed this, that he put his critics, on their heels at every turn here. I think the overarching message coming out of this speech was really game on. I mean, it is clear from this speech that the general election is now on. And for months, the president has been criticized for not going hard enough against Donald Trump. There really was a sense tonight that he was ripping the Band-Aid off, that he was letting loose, that he was letting out a lot of that frustration. It certainly didn't take him long to tear into Trump on everything from NATO to abortion. He assailed the Trump tax cuts. He skewered him on immigration. And the tone of it was just so classic Biden, right? It wasn't polished, lofty rhetoric. It was folksy. It was personal. He was funny at times. And David, he repeatedly put Republicans on notice. He sparred with them in the room in a way I don't think we've ever seen before at a State of the Union. I mean, at one point, poking them on the immigration bill, he said, you don't like that bill, huh? The one that you guys wanted, the one that your party negotiated? He asked them point blankly, what are you against? This felt more like a raucous, rowdy campaign speech than a State of the Union. And I think the big question and challenge going forward is, can the president bring this fire to the trail? Will this Joe Biden show up at those campaign events all the way to November?
Yeah, prodding Republicans, asking them, what in this bill don't you like? Tell me what you don't want, that they've laid out with the help of Senator Langford, who was right in that audience there tonight. John, it was very striking, taking on Donald Trump, but not by name. How many times did he say predecessor tonight?
Hey, look, this was a great night for Joe Biden, and this was much more a campaign speech than a State of the Union address. And you saw that in how he repeatedly took on Donald Trump. By my count, by our count, 16 times did he either say my predecessor, the former president, or other people my age, referring to Donald Trump. Very direct attacks. The most powerful one, the very first one, when he comes out and he first invokes Ronald Reagan, who told the Russians, who told the Soviets, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. And then he said, compared to Donald Trump, who tells Putin, do whatever the hell you want. Very pointed, the kind of campaign-style speech you just never have seen in a State of the Union, but I think very effective.
And in fact, what he was talking about is Donald Trump, just in recent days, talking about trying to get people to up the spending on defense, NATO countries, which has been a long-standing argument for Donald Trump, and one that even President Biden has talked about, making sure everybody pays the fair share. But it was that turn when Donald Trump then said, if they don't do it, well then,
I'd say do whatever the hell you'd want.
To Vladimir Putin.
So, look, but you have to remember, I think this was a great night for Joe Biden. I don't know if it was a home run, but it certainly was a triple. But one factor to consider here, he's been practicing for this speech. This is home turf. he knew the responses. The Republicans are very predictable. This audience is a very predictable audience. He knew the taunts that were going to come, and he knew that what he was going to do in response. And the way he directly took on Marjorie Taylor Greene.
No, there's no question about that. He knew that was coming on immigration. He knew what her argument was going to be, and he answered it in real time.
The rest of the campaign will not be so scripted. That's the caution.
It will not be.
Though. It will not be so trivial. But this was a very big night for Biden.
No question about that. Linsey Davis also with us here at the desk. And Linsey, that moment, very rare for a president to look right at members of the Supreme Court sitting before them. But he did, and he talked about the overturning of Roe v. Wade. He urged Congress, let's codify Roe v. Wade. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But he mentioned that in their decision on Roe v. Wade, that they talked about the power women have, the electoral power they have, and then he ran with it.
So significant in that moment for him to look at the justices directly in the room and talk about that. And specifically, he said, look, the power of women, that when reproductive freedom was on the ballot, we won in 2022, 2023, and we will win again in 2024. And it's important to note that abortion may be on the ballot in as many as 11 states, including the battleground states of Arizona and Nevada. And so potentially that could determine the election, right? If that really brings people out in those two particular states. But I do want to add, though, David, I think that even beyond some of these big ticket items of abortion or immigration or economy, in many cases, this was about the elephant in the room, if you will, about his age. And those people who have said that they voted for Biden the last time around, 61% of them, according to the New York Times, who said that they thought that he was too old to be an effective president. And it seemed he really ate his Wheaties today, right? I mean, he had that fire in the belly. He had the quick zingers, and he addressed, for many accounts, directly head on, the issue of his age, saying it's not about how old we are, it's about how old our ideas are.
No question about that, Linsey, taking on the issue of age and saving it really to the very end of the speech, saying, I know I may not look like it, but I've been around for a while, using a little humor to address it. I want to get reaction from Donna Brazile, former head of the DNC, of course, an advisor to Democrats along the way, and this administration as well. I'm so curious, Donna, what your advice was them leading up to tonight, and did he deliver in your eyes?
I mean, look, he had to pour some Tabasco in his speech, and I think he delivered it very well. It was spicy, it was juicy, it was another masterclass in how do you defend your values, how do you tell the American people, because of you, we're stronger, because of you, we're fighting harder. It was quintessential Joe Biden. Politics is in his blood and his DNA, and tonight we saw why he was elected president. Let
me ask you, Donna, for those at home who might ask, why not a performance like this in other moments along the way? Where did this come from tonight? What in particular about this?
He was speaking to the American people, and also he was speaking truth to power, looking at the Supreme Court. He said every last word I would have said to John Roberts if I had the opportunity. So tonight, women and of course, the men who love us and support us understand that Joe Biden is going to fight for women. He's going to fight for our reproductive health. What I loved about the president tonight is that he got up and the first thing he said to Mr. Putin was that, I see you and we're going to defend Ukraine. It was a great speech, a great night for Joe Biden, but Joe Biden shows up every day of his life, whether he shows up in the morning, and by the way, it's oatmeal, not Wheaties. I've had
and she would know. Donna would know.
Pleasure of having breakfast, and I wanted grits, and he had oatmeal. But he showed up tonight, and he's going to show up every day. And what you're going to see on the campaign trail is not just the president, the vice president, and everyone else who's going to stand up for democracy and freedom.
Did he kickstart this campaign tonight?
The campaign was already underway. I think tonight he gave us a little gas in our tank.
Reince Priebus, former head of the RNC, former chief of staff to Donald Trump. What was your take on tonight?
Well, it sounded a lot like a DNC speech, like a convention speech, a political speech. I think it was a health and wellness check. I think everyone was right about that. I think he passed the health and wellness check tonight. Clearly excited, perhaps overcompensating, maybe yelling quite a bit. I think you're going to see a lot of people talking about the screaming and yelling. But I also think he runs a risk of trying to paint a picture that the American people don't buy. This idea that the economy is booming, that the border is secure, and it's only because the Republicans won't pass a bill, and America is dominant on the world stage. And so I think he overplayed that quite a bit. I don't think that's what Americans are feeling out there. But as far as a health and wellness check, yeah, I think he did that tonight.
Let me ask you, Ryan, you're still closely connected to people who are working within the Trump campaign. The national polls as they stand right now, and we're really far out, we all know that, but they are very close. Donald Trump leading in some of the major polls of the last 2 weeks and in the battleground states, but again, a very close race. Is that the sense even inside Trump world?
Yeah,
just how close this is?
Absolutely. I mean, there is no feeling like this is, a blowout. I think people in the Trump operation know that it's going to be close. They know that it's going to come down to 100,000 votes in 5 states. It's all going to be about data, ground game, and turnout, and that's what they know is happening.
Ryan Priebus, Donna Brazil, both with us here as we cover this, and we're preparing for the Republican response. We should let you all know at home. We will bring that to you as well with a rising star in the Republican Party. We continue to watch President Biden in that room here tonight. And Martha Raddatz, there were so many questions going into tonight, obviously about age in this country, even from President Biden's supporters. You've traveled the country leading up to the primaries. He was uncontested. I mean, obviously the final candidate dropped out. But even supporters of Biden, when they leave, telling the exit polls that they were concerned about his age as well. Did he assuage those concerns tonight with his performance here?
Well, he certainly was vigorous. It was a campaign speech. It was probably for the Democrats a dream campaign speech because of his energy. I don't know whether he was really screaming riots, but he was definitely raising the level of his voice. And I think that probably because he often does clear his throat. He does have problems with his voice sometimes. He didn't seem to have a lot of problems tonight. But I also think this speech was more than just a campaign speech. It was a legacy speech. No matter what happens in November, Joe Biden laid down the hammer tonight about what he believes and what he feels about this country. So I think that Democrats will look at it as that as well. And that's why Joe Biden probably really rose to this moment. He knew not only from a campaign speech how important it was, but for his own legacy, David.
And I suspect, Martha, that we heard the beginning of what will be a major campaign theme here. At the end of this speech, when he said, it's not how old you are, it's how old your ideas are. And he tried to reframe this age debate.
That's exactly right. And I think his campaign people have been saying again and again, and people within the White House, I know there has been some disagreement about how they are handling that age issue. You can't ignore it. He can't ignore it. And in the next few weeks, he may stumble. He may make mistakes, and it'll come back to that age issue again. But for tonight, he put that to rest in so many ways.
I want to bring in Terry Moran, who has covered multiple presidencies here in Washington. Terry, you knew the stakes going into tonight, and it's not hyperbole to talk about the high wire act that President Biden was walking into that chamber to try to perform. Did he deliver?
It sure was a high wire act, and I think the fair thing to say, a lot of Democrats over the past few weeks have been panicking. I'll bet the vast majority of them feel better tonight because the president did hit hard. You can talk about his performance all you want, but I think more importantly, what he hit. This was the old-time religion, the middle class, working class, labor, Democrat agenda. And he reached for it again and again and again, both in terms of the values, that line, you can't love your country only when you win. The best line of the speech. Fair play and decency are bedrock values of the middle class. No matter who people voted for, the notion that you don't love your country if you guys lose, it doesn't sit well with them. And then right across that economic agenda, hitting again and again and again, middle class values.
With just a few seconds left in this segment, Pierre Thomas, Chief Justice Correspondent, President Biden making it very clear tonight, defending democracy will be a key theme right into November.
Absolutely. He went very hard on the issue of January 6th in terms of the attack on the Capitol. He wanted to make sure that everyone in the public was reminded of that, pointing to Congress to let them know that they were scurrying for their lives, pointing that out as well, David. Also, it struck me that this was a president, particularly in regards to the House Republicans who have been trying to impeach him, that he really wanted to take them on head on and let them know he really didn't care that much about how they felt about what he was saying, David.
President Biden with a smile on his face there.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.